Hey guys, this is Dark Sage here with a guide on Astonia, the Return of Yendor. So for the first video, we're going to take a look at stats, different characters, and the general feel of Astonia. So here we first have the three different types of characters that you can become in Estonia. The first that we have is a warrior, the second is a mage, and the third is what's called a sandhu. It's kind of a mix between a warrior and a mage. We'll get more into that later. So if we look over here in the bottom left, you have your skills. For the warrior, you're going to have hit points, endurance, wisdom, intuition, agility, strength. For your weapons, you can raise a dagger, hand-to-hand, sword, attack. We'll get more into the differences in those. You have your armor skill, attack, parry, war cry, tactics, surround hit, body control, speed skill, bartering, perception, stealth, regenerate, and immunity. So we'll start off here from the top. Your hit points is what it sounds like. It's your life force. Once it hits zero, you die, and we'll get more into what happens when you die here. Your endurance is used for a couple of things. For warriors, it's used for when you war cry. As you can see here, it took some, and that's based on the modifier for war cry down below. What you can also do is you can change into what's called fast mode, which is like running. You'll move slightly faster, and you can see that it takes endurance here. And also, odd use of endurance is also you can shout by typing /s, and then you can see there that you shout high, take some endurance, and it just increases the area of effect that people can hear your what's called white chat. So those are endurance and hit points. Here, you'll have what's referred to as your attributes, your wisdom, intuition, agility, and strength. Every skill is gets mods based on these. Um, I can go more into that in another video as to which ones affect each one. But the general premise is that the more you raise these, the more mods that you get here. But it is note that these are more expensive to raise in terms of skill costs, so you don't want to go crazy. Later on in the guide, I will talk more about raising skills and how to do so for new players. Here you have your weapons. Now there are also two, one more that you don't see here, which is a staff, which is only mages. We'll cover that when I look at the mage skills in the next character. But you see here that you have dagger, hand-to-hand, sword, and two-handed. Um, Now, each one of these is perfectly viable. You can use each one of these, but the more useful ones are going to be sword and two-handed, and that's because warriors are very heavily reliant on melee damage. And if you see here, if I right click the item at the top, every weapon has a weapon modifier. Now a dagger is going to have a lower weapon modifier, and swords and two-handed swords are going to have a higher weapon modifier, so you're going to get more damage out of them. So it's generally recommended to go sword or two-handed. If you want to challenge, absolutely, you can go dagger or hand-to-hand. Your armor skill, if you look up here, we have different armors. The higher your armor skill, the higher level armor that you can wear, and in form, you will get more armor value, which your armor value soaks up some of the damage that you're dealt. Your skill attack will determine how often your attack will hit through the opponent's defense. Likewise, parry is how often your character will deflect the attack and not take any damage. Warcry, you saw me do before, is an area of effect skill that you can see here that it kind of stunned him. If your Warcry is high enough in immunity, or higher than their immunity, it will do that stun effect, and it'll also reduce their speed. If they get stunned like that, they will be unable to cast things like Warcry or any of the mage spells. And then here we have tactics. Tactics, and I'll right click. You can right click all of these skills to get kind of a general idea about them. Tactics is a modifier that modifies many skills. For one, as it says here, attack and parry. It's not the tactics modifier isn't shown. The effect isn't shown over here where your skills are. It's more of like a hidden thing, but it will modify both attack and parry. It also modifies Warcry and immunity. And on Sandus over here, the mage warrior hybrid, it also affects their spells. And I can cover that when I switch over to the Sand. And then next we have surround hit. So what surround hit is when you're fighting. So say I was fighting the Sand right here. It would be the one-on-one. What surround hit does is it lets you attack both the left and the right sides. So you'll be hitting left, front, and right. There is also stances, which will be in another guide. For warriors and arch warriors, uh, the dragon stance modifier allows for an 8 tile surround hit. So what that means is left, front, left diagonal, front right diagonal, back, back left diagonal, and back right diagonal. So you'll hit all around yourself. Body control. This is a skill that will let you um, buff up your weapon damage and your armor value. So the higher the stat is, the more that you'll see an effect in AV and weapon value. And then speed skill is just a skill that raises your raw speed right here. And in this game, there's called speed breaks. So once you hit a certain threshold, your character will move faster, it'll attack faster, just the animations will get faster. Bartering, perception, and stealth are kind of, we'll call it like third level skills. They're not so much important for a lot of things. Bartering increases your selling and buying capability. There's professions later on that you can boost the buy and sell called a master trader. We'll also be getting into a video with that. Perception lets you see through a stealth, and stealth obviously lets you hide from other players. There was a big stealth rework, um, so I'll have to cover the stealth later on. Regenerate lets you regenerate your endurance at a set interval. Once you get it high enough, you will actually start regenerating more endurance as you're fighting. So, which is very handy for warriors because when they're fighting, they use their war cry as their shield. As their shield goes down, if you regenerate that endurance, you can re-war cry and re-up that shield. And then you have your immunity, which is how well you defend against spell damage, like war cry and the other various spells that we'll get into with the mage. So that's basically the warrior. But when you start on a warrior class, you'll get a sword, your helmet, chest, legs, and legs and arms. And these are all what's called quality 1, which is the lower quality. You'll see here when you right click, it's made of iron. Second quality Q2 is made of steel, and third quality Q3 is made of mithril. And as you go in the different metals, they get stronger even within the same sword 1 value. Now there are 2 things I will also mention when you start a new character. The game has what's called softcore and hardcore characters. When I open the description for this one, this is a softcore character. You can see that it has 0 saves, was saved 0 times, and has died 0 times. Now, what that means is softcore characters, every time you level, you will get one save. And what that save does is anytime that you would die, you do not actually die. You would lose your save. You'll respawn here at the last blue square that you touched, and you won't lose any experience. What happens with a hardcore, let me switch over to, well, I don't need to switch over. Let me right click. So when I bring up Lilith, the Sandhu, who is a hardcore character, you'll see this is a hardcore character and died 0 times, so we don't have any saves. So what happens on a hardcore character is that when you die, there is no saves. You will die. If you're not in a certain area, your body will drop, and you'll have to go and retrieve that body and retrieve your experience, or your EQ and your items, and you will lose a larger chunk of experience than a softcore if a softcore dies. Now, the upside of being a hardcore character is you earn 10% more skill XP or kill XP, and that's a global thing. And when you raise your stats, a softcore character for warriors and mages are capped at, I want to say 115. And if you're a hardcore, they're capped at 122 before you have to do what's called pass the max raising, which I will also make a guide on that. So those are kind of the difference between the softcore and hardcore. If you're a new character, it is very recommended that you start as a softcore just so you can get to learn the basics and all that kind of thing. There are potions later on that you can get through events or buying from other players that let you turn a softcore character into a hardcore. So it's not so much like the old days where if you started a softcore, you're always going to be that softcore. So there is that. So let me switch over to the mage screen here. There we go. And we'll say bye to the warrior for now. So we'll look at the skills of the mage. So if you look over here, you've got the same hit points and endurance. Other than not having war cry, the endurance still acts the same way with running and with shouting. There's also mines that as you mine, it'll cost endurance. You have your mana, which is what you use to cast your spells. So if I cast a spell here, you see that it took mana. Now that is a set amount, and I'll cover the exact amounts when I go down. So that is your capacity to cast magic. You have your same attributes, same thing. Each one of them affects certain skills and all that differently. Your dagger, hand to hand, and staff, your weapons. Now, this isn't as crucial on mages as it is warriors because you're not really going to build a melee-based mage. These are more for um, your parry chance for uh, protecting against enemy attacks. And the same is for the warriors. Both your weapon skill and on the warrior's parry are your defense, and on a mage, it's your weapon skill and your magic shield that make up your defense chance. Now, your attack chance is only your weapon skill. So that's kind of why mages have a disadvantage, and they also have no way of really buffing their melee attack. So it's better to just go a spell-oriented mage. Here you have Bless, and what that is a skill that buffs your skills. It's low rate. My skills are low right now, so you won't really see a change. If you look before, it said 10 out of 10. The Bless, when I activate it, has a 10 out of 11. For mages, this modifier right here is made up of two things. One, it's skills that you have on equipment, which I have some examples on the Sandhu that we'll get to. And secondly is from a Bless. Now, mages need both a Bless and EQ to make up their attribute modifiers. Warriors and Saiyans do not. They can get all of their attributes from Bless. So you can rework your sets into that. If you know you're always going to have a Bless, you can not have your attribute modifiers on your equipment saving slots. But that's kind of like a more in-depth, once you're into the game kind of thing. Heal lets you heal HP damage. Uh, Freeze lets you come and slow your opponent. So we'll come over here to the training dummy just to show it. Now you see that he'll turn blue. What that does is kind of similar to the war cry of the warrior, but it affects the speed. And the lower that speed, the slower that the character is going to be. So they'll attack slower, they'll cast slower, that sort of thing. Magic Shield is the mage equivalent of Warcry for their shield. And you can see now that the Bless is wearing off. Bless for unarched mages without the skill duration um, will not last very long. I think it's 30 seconds. Magic Shield is the shield for mages and for sands. Lightning, as you can see when I cast it here, you see that little orb rotating around you. It'll deal constant damage to all enemies in a small area. The more enemies in the area, the less damage that it'll do to each. So that's something to keep in mind. You have your fire ring. When I cast that like here, that is a small ring. It's an 8 tile ring, and it'll do fire damage to everyone around. Now the difference is between lightning and fire. Lightning will do more constant damage, and with the duration skill that I don't have because I'm not on an archmage. But when you raise that duration skill, it lets that flash orb last longer. Fire does not have the equivalent to that. Fire is a quick cast right here that you see it, boom, 1 tick damage. But it does more upfront damage and it'll do more HP damage through shields. So it is still very useful. And another thing to note is that there's all of these spells. There will be another video because this is very in-depth. This is new to the Yendor server. If you've ever played Old World, you're not going to be familiar with this. And Pulse lets you, it'll cast what you see as a green ring. Pulse is interesting. There's 2 ways that Pulse works. There's what's called auto pulsing, which is a set. If you slash auto pulse, basically what it'll do is anytime that the system uh, meets the 2 requirements for auto pulse to go off, your character will cast it. And now those 2 are that your pulse mod right here is high enough to kill the mob in the pulse hit, and 2 that the enemy does not have any mana, and that's what's auto pulse. Now you can do what's called manual pulsing, which is casting it just like normal, like this. This is going to be more of like an advanced thing when you get a feel for the game. You know what the modifier, the pulse modifier is to kill the exact type of enemy that you're doing. And even if they have mana, you can cast that yourself and it'll affect it. The only thing that auto pulse does is wait for that condition of does the enemy have mana. And then we have the same barter perception stealth, same way that it works for warriors. And over here you have meditate. Now what meditate does is it lets you regenerate your magic shield passively. Magic shield up into a certain base will only regenerate as you're standing here. If you're in combat, it will not regenerate. And it also, meditate also affects how fast you will get back your mana when you're at an idle rest period. Now, once you get to a certain meditate base level, you will actually start regenerating magic shield as you're fighting, but you will not regenerate mana as you're fighting. So that's important to note. And then the same thing, immunity affects your spell damage. Now, what I was talking about spell damage before, that's your freeze, lightning, fire, and pulse. All of those affect immunity affects how well you resist it. And this game works on these modifiers here. So your relation to your attack modifier to their defensive modifier is what lets it either the attack carry through or the spell to affect them more. So that's the mage. And then let me switch over lastly to the sand. I will say bye to the mage. So here's the sandhu character. Now, like I said, this is a mix between a warrior and a mage. So you see here that they have the hit points, the endurance, the mana, the same intuition. They have the dagger, hand-to-hand sword, two-handed, just like the warrior does, but they do not have the staff that the mage does. You have armor skill, attack, parry, warcry, tactics, surround hit, body control, speed skill, like the warrior. Bless, heal, freeze, magic shield, lightning, fire, pulse, like the mage. The same bartering, perception, stealth as all three have them. And then the sandhu has the regenerate and meditate, so it has both those and immunity. So it's a very big mashup of the mage and the warrior. Now the thing to know about Saiyans is one, you cannot start the game as a Saiyan. To do that, you have to go through a quest line of what's called labs. You have to complete them, and then after you do all five, you can battle the gatekeeper. Now every class is going to face the gatekeeper. What that does is it allows you to arch, which allows warriors to learn the rage skill, lets mages earn the duration skill. Um, Arch Saiyans don't earn any additional skills, they more earn hidden modifiers. They'll have a hidden duration that you can't raise. But what it does for arching, all three of them, is it lets you push your skills past the base of 50. If you do not arch, you cannot push any skill past the base of 50. So you won't get very far through normal means if you do not arch. There are people that have done challenges in the past where they don't arch and they do get very high. That's use of other in-game systems that are more in-depth. And before I was talking about equipment modifiers, if I right click here, you see that there's an amulet. And if you pick it up, you'll see that it goes into this next slot. It has modifiers on it. And if I were able to put these on at the time, when I put it on, you see here two-handed attack parry immunity +3, so it would add 3 to these. Now there are maxes um, for how much you can raise your skill using these modifiers. For mages and warriors, it is 50% of the base. So if I had a base of 10, 50% of that would be 5. I could only raise it using equipment +5. Anything over that is just wasted for the current time until you raise the base and then you raise how much you can raise the equipment. For Saiyans, it's a little bit different. It's 0.725. So if you're talking about that same 10 base, you would raise it, it would round down, so you could use 7 to raise that. So they do get a little heavier equipment modifier, but on the other side is their skill cost to raise things is higher than both warriors and mages. So you will not get the same bases out of a Saiyan that you will get from a mage or warrior, and that is why they have the equipment modifier set higher to kind of balance things. And to set the hardcore, you would come over to this James fellow, and then you would say hardcore. When you start a character, he'll kind of give you a whole spiel about it. Helps if you spell it right. So it pops up with all of this. The longhand that I already told you is that you lose your saves, you get more experience loss when you do so, and it is a very harder challenge. So if you do not know the game, you're not comfortable with the game, I would recommend Softcore. And all you would do, this character is already a hardcore, but you would just click this. you'd say that and you would turn into a hardcore character. Let's see, what else can I do here? So there's also what's called recalls. Recalls let you recall. I'll touch the blue square and I'll use one. So here it says can be used by a level 15 and below. If I hit it, you get teleported back to the blue square. This is your saving grace for both characters. If you know you're gonna die, or if you're in a really far part and you don't want to call what's called lagging out, which takes 5 minutes to lag out of the server, you can use these. The cost goes up severely as you level up. The first 1 through 100 levels, the recalls aren't going to be too crazy. And there's always people that can buy recalls using Master Trader. So don't worry about buying them full price on here. Just use what's called the all chat, which is /C1. And then you could look for it like, can anyone buy me? Can anyone MT for me? And then there's always people online that usually can do that for you. And you can buy pots. Now, pots come in 4 sizes. There's small, medium, large, and huge, or small, medium, big, and huge. This is a big combo. There's HP, mana, and combos. HP just heals your HP. Mana only gives you mana, but the combo will give you all HP, endurance, and mana. And the amount that they refill goes up. The huge ones you can only get in a certain quest line called Jobbington, and they heal more, but they're harder to get. And that pretty much covers the basics of Estonia. More videos will be coming out on quest lines. There's already a mage guide going on by Sir Smokes a Lot, also on this channel. So I do encourage you, if you're doing a mage, to do go check those out. And I'll be back with another video, guys. See ya.